There's a complaint, a video, and a record from your past.
I figured.
A vulnerable adult, an incident in the night, your name is on it.
It wasn't me.
That's not what the record says.
The record isn't the truth.
You understand how this looks, right?
I understand exactly how it looks. But you're about to find out why it looks that way.
The legal notice arrived on a Thursday. Not at the office, at the house. Hand-delivered. Slid through the mail slot at 7:42 in the morning with the quiet, administrative precision of something designed to feel like a verdict before you have finished reading the first line. Graham Whitmore had just set 2 plates of cut fruit on the kitchen table. Lily was in her high chair, fists full of mango. Maya was pulling herself up along the edge of the counter, showing off her legs, making the small sound she made when she was proud of herself, a kind of low, satisfied hum that Graham had come to love the way you love a song that only plays in your house. Chloe was at the sink, washing the blender cup, wearing a green apron that had a small iron-on patch in the shape of a sun. She had put the patch on herself. He had not asked why. He had noticed it the way you notice things about people who have become part of the texture of your daily life. He picked up the envelope. The return address was a law firm he did not recognize. He opened it at the kitchen table while Lily threw a piece of mango at Maya's shoulder and both of them dissolved into laughter and Chloe turned from the sink with a dish towel and made a face that added to the chaos. He read the first paragraph. Then he read it again. Formal complaint filed with the State Office of Child Protective Services, case reference 7714-B, alleging an incident of child endangerment occurring on the premises of the Whitmore residence. Specific allegations include physical risk to minor children, unsupervised exposure to hazardous conditions, and a pattern of behavior consistent with emotional manipulation of children in her care. The kitchen was still full of laughter. Graham set the letter face down on the table. He looked at Chloe. She was laughing at something Maya was doing with the dish towel. She had grabbed it with both hands and was pulling it toward herself with the gleeful stubbornness of a 14-month-old who has discovered that pulling things is one of life's great pleasures. The morning sun came through the window and laid itself across her shoulder. She looked completely, effortlessly at ease. She looked like someone who belonged exactly where she was. Graham folded the letter back into the envelope. And said nothing. He would tell himself, later, that he was waiting for more information. That he was a man who did not act on single data points. That caution was not the same as doubt. He would tell himself this. But doubt, once it enters a room, does not announce itself loudly. It does not arrive at a door with a suitcase and demand a room. It sits down quietly, at the edge of things, and it waits. And the longer you do not address it, the more comfortable it becomes. By the time Graham Whitmore poured his second cup of coffee that morning, the doubt was already at the table. Before we go any further, tell us in the comments, have you ever doubted someone you trusted, not because of anything they did, but because of what someone else told you? Because this story is about exactly that. Subscribe so you never miss what's coming. This one runs deep. Let me tell you what peace looks like when it is real. Not performed. Not managed. Not maintained by a 16-page document and oiled locks and surveillance monitors. Real. Months had passed since the afternoon Graham Whitmore walked into his own living room and found his daughter standing on a young woman's chest in yellow rubber gloves, laughing with everything they had. Months since he had sat across from Chloe Marsh in a coffee shop and said the words that cost him more than any deal he had ever made, "You were right about what I felt." And in those months, the house had changed. Not in the way houses change when you redecorate or hire new staff or arrive home with a decision already made. It had changed the way houses change when the people inside them change, slowly, from the inside, room by room, like a place finally learning its own purpose. Graham got on the floor now. Every day. He was still awkward on it, still had the particular stiffness of a man whose body was not accustomed to being unreasonable, but he was on it, and his daughters knew the shape of his hands now. Knew the way his voice changed when he was playing versus when he was serious. Knew the sound his laugh made when he forgot himself. Chloe was still there. She had come back. And she had come back on terms that were different from the original ones, not employer and employee exactly, though that was still the arrangement on paper. Something else. The particular relationship of two adults who have seen each other clearly and found the honesty in it worth staying for. So here is what peace looked like: a kitchen in the morning, fruit on the table, a green apron with a sun patch, and two girls laughing at a stolen dish towel. Here is what threatened it: a legal notice, anonymously filed, citing incidents that appeared in a video clip that had arrived in Graham's inbox by noon that same Thursday. 47 seconds. Chloe's voice, raised. One of the twins crying. A door closing hard. 47 seconds with no before and no after, no context, no explanation, just the part that could be made to look wrong. Now there are 3 questions that will carry us through this story. First, what is the truth behind that video? Because 47 seconds can be anything. 47 seconds can be pulled from the middle of a moment you would celebrate if you saw the whole of it. Or they can be exactly what they appear to be. The question is whether Graham Whitmore is capable, now, of waiting long enough to find out. Second, who filed the complaint? Who gathered the evidence, found the clip, knew which law firm to contact, and delivered the envelope to the door at 7:42 in the morning with timing so precise it almost felt theatrical. Because nothing about this feels like a stranger. Everything about it feels like someone who knows the house. Who knows the schedule? Who knows that Thursday morning is the softest moment in Graham Whitmore's week? And third, and this is the one that matters most, what is the lie in Chloe Marsh's past? Because there is one. Graham will find it, in the way that he finds everything, carefully, completely, and at 3 a.m. with a laptop open and a cold cup of coffee beside him. And what he finds will look, at first glance, exactly like betrayal. But this story is not about what things look like at first glance. It never was. Let us take a moment, before the weight of this lands, to understand what had been built. Not in the legal sense. Not in the contractual sense. In the human sense, the kind of building that takes time and small decisions and repeated choices to show up, and that cannot be itemized or documented or produced as evidence in a formal complaint. Graham Whitmore had spent the first 14 months of his daughters' lives at a distance that he had disguised, even to himself, as devotion. The rules were devotion. The temperature control was devotion. The 16 pages were devotion. He had organized his love into a management document because love without structure terrified him, and structure without love is the only language grief had left him with. Then Chloe. And after Chloe, after the coffee shop conversation, after the honest reckoning, after the slow, embarrassing, unglamorous work of learning how to be present in a way he had never practiced, something in that house had softened. Not weakened. Softened. The difference matters. A rigid thing that softens becomes flexible. A rigid thing that weakens breaks. Graham had been on the edge of breaking for a long time. He had softened instead, and his daughters were growing up inside that. But here is the thing about peace that has been hard won, it is not the same as safety. Because peace built on trust has an enemy that ordinary peace does not. It has the specific vulnerability of having something real to lose. The old Graham, the one who oiled his own locks and read surveillance footage at midnight, had been protecting an absence. A monument. A carefully maintained space where grief lived and joy was not permitted. The new Graham, the one on the floor, the one who let his laughter be heard, the one who had begun to look at Chloe across the dinner table with an expression his daughters found ordinary and he found quietly astonishing, was protecting something alive. And alive things can be hurt. Now, Chloe Marsh. There is a chapter of her life that did not appear in her application. Not because she had hidden it deliberately, in the way people hide things to deceive, but because it was the kind of thing that does not translate into forms and reference letters, the kind of thing that only makes sense when someone knows who you are. When she was 22, working as a home aide for an elderly woman named Constance Adler in Dayton, Ohio, something had happened. A neighbor had filed a complaint with Adult Protective Services, an allegation of neglect, citing an incident in which Constance had been found in the yard in the early morning hours, disoriented, still in her nightgown. The complaint had included a name, Chloe Marsh. What the complaint had not included, what Chloe had chosen not to correct publicly, in the investigation that followed, was that she had not been there that night. She had traded shifts at the last minute with Constance's granddaughter, a young woman named Ray who was 17 years old and had been trying, in secret, to be a caregiver without anyone knowing she was doing it because her mother had told her she was not allowed. Chloe had said nothing. Because Ray had a future. Because a formal complaint against a 17-year-old would follow her. Because Constance herself, when she regained clarity, had looked at Chloe and said, "Don't let them put this on the girl." And Chloe, who had grown up watching her grandmother choose sacrifice in small daily increments, understood this request the way she understood few others, completely and without question. The case was closed without formal finding. The record existed. The record named Chloe. And somewhere, someone had found that record. And someone had decided to use it. The video arrived at noon. It came through an anonymous email to Graham's personal address, not his business address, not the household management account, but the personal address that a very short list of people knew. The email contained a single message, no greeting, no signature. Is this the woman you trust with your children? Below it, a video file. 47 seconds. Graham watched it in his study with the door closed. The quality was not amateur, it was the quality of a camera that was trying to look amateur, the slight grain and compressed frame rate of footage that has been intentionally degraded just enough to seem incidental. Like something caught accidentally. Like something real. He recognized the nursery immediately. He recognized Chloe's voice, raised, taut, on the edge of something. I said stop. I said it, and you need to listen right now. Right now. One of the twins, he couldn't tell which from the angle, was crying. Hard. The kind of crying that builds from sustained frustration. We don't do that. Do you understand me? We don't do that. A door, somewhere close, closing with force. The clip ended. Graham sat still for a long time. He was, in his deepest self, a prosecutor. He had built a career on the ability to look at evidence without flinching and follow it wherever it led. He did not permit himself the comfort of deciding what the evidence meant before he had examined it fully. So he examined it fully. He watched it 8 times. On the 8th viewing, he caught something in the audio that he had missed in the first 7, a sound just before Chloe's voice went sharp. A sound that was small and brief and unmistakably specific. The particular wet, hissing sound of something hot hitting skin. He thought about what that might mean. He did not call Chloe into the room. Not yet. He set the laptop screen down on his desk and looked at the ceiling of his study and stayed with the feeling that was moving through his chest, not yet rage, not yet fear, something more uncomfortable than either. The particular sensation of a man who has lowered his guard and is now waiting to discover whether that was wisdom or exposure. He did not call her. But he changed. It was not dramatic, the way these things are in films. There was no confrontation. No cold accusation. No door slammed with a verdict inside it. Just withdrawal. The particular withdrawal of a person who does not know what to do with their doubt and so puts it into the space between themselves and the thing they are doubtful of. Less eye contact. Answers where there had been conversations. A reinstalled attention to schedules, to documentation, to the careful professional distance of the contract. Chloe noticed on the first day. She was attuned to that house the way she was attuned to all houses where she worked, had always understood the emotional weather of rooms the way some people understand the literal weather, in the body, before it arrives. She felt the change in Graham the way she had felt the change in Constance Adler when the Parkinsons had moved into a new phase, not in any dramatic announcement, but in the texture of the ordinary. He had stopped sitting at the kitchen table in the mornings. He had reinstated the formal check-in schedule, the written one, the one from before, when the house had been a management operation rather than a home. He had looked at her, once, across the living room, looked at her with the particular expression she had seen on him when she first arrived, the expression of a man trying to decide whether what he was seeing matched what he had been told, and then he had looked away. She said nothing to him. But that night, after the girls were asleep, she went to her room and sat on the edge of her narrow bed and looked at the wall where Lily's new drawing was taped, not the crumpled one, which was gone, but a new one, done with more coordination now and slightly less ambition, which Chloe considered an improvement, and she held what she was feeling with the careful honesty of a person who cannot afford to be wrong about her own emotions. She was not angry. She was frightened. Not frightened of Graham. Frightened of the pattern. Of the particular way that something good can be taken apart by doubt before it has a chance to defend itself. She had seen this before, in the investigation in Dayton, in the months that followed when employers received the report and made decisions based on the name in the file and not the person in front of them. She knew how this moved. She knew the speed of it. And she knew that the one thing it required from her, historically, was silence. She had stayed silent before. It had cost her something she was still paying for. She was not sure she had it in her to pay again. The complaint, meanwhile, was moving through its formal channels with the orderly efficiency of a process that does not care about context. Graham received a follow-up letter from the CPS caseworker, a scheduled home visit, a standard interview with the children's primary caregiver. He received it on a Monday. The visit was scheduled for the following Wednesday. That Monday night he sat in his study until 2 in the morning with the camera footage from the nursery queued up, reviewing the last 6 weeks with the particular attention of a man who no longer trusted his own eyes. He saw what he had always seen. Chloe on the floor. Chloe at the table. Chloe catching Maya at the edge of the step before the stumble completed itself. Chloe reading the development book she had checked out from the library with her own card, with the page corners turned in the way of someone who is not performing attention but actually paying it. He saw no raised voices. No closed doors with force. No moments that matched the 47 seconds. But he had seen the 47 seconds. He had heard her voice in them. He could not unhear it. And there was the record from Dayton. The legal review his office had compiled over the weekend was thorough and unambiguous, a formal complaint, 5 years ago, naming Chloe Marsh, involving a vulnerable adult, closed without formal finding. Sparse on detail. Clean in the way that things are cleaned rather than resolved. His attorney, a careful woman named Patricia who did not traffic in comfort, had set the file on his desk with the measured delivery of someone who has done this before. It's not damning, Patricia had said. But it exists. And someone knew exactly where to look for it. Who filed the original complaint in Dayton? That's where it gets interesting. Patricia had paused. The original complaint in Dayton was filed anonymously. As is this one. She had held his gaze. Same legal structure. Same information approach, character targeted rather than conduct specific. The person who drafted this complaint understands how these processes work. They know how to build a record without appearing in it. Graham had looked at the file for a long moment. Pull everything you can find, he had said. I want to know who is standing behind the anonymous. Patricia had left. And Graham had sat with the question that was beginning, slowly, to become more insistent than the doubt. Not, what did Chloe do? But, who wants me to believe she did something? Wednesday arrived. The caseworker's name was Gerald, a man of mid-50s with the practiced, unhurried manner of someone who had spent 3 decades sitting in rooms where the truth was dressed in multiple costumes and had learned to wait for it to undress itself. He came alone. He had a folder. He had a quiet way of entering spaces that made rooms feel smaller without adding any volume. Chloe met him at the door. Graham watched from the hallway, not concealed, just present, as she introduced herself, as she offered him coffee, as she moved with the unhurried ease of someone who has not calculated how to appear. She was simply herself. It was one of the things that had always distinguished her from the previous nannies, who had always seemed to be performing their competence for whoever was watching. Chloe performed for no one. She was the same on camera as off it. The same in the morning before anyone was up as she was in the afternoon when Graham came home. Gerald noted this. Graham could see him noting it, the slight adjustment in the quality of his attention, the way a man who has seen a lot of fear in this kind of meeting registers the absence of it. The twins were brought into the living room. Maya walked in on her own now, a fact that still produced a small bloom of something in Graham's chest every time he saw it. She came in the particular way she walked, which was still slightly wide-legged and deeply committed, like someone who has recently discovered that legs exist and intends to use them aggressively. Lily walked in behind her holding a stuffed rabbit by one ear and making a sound that was either a song or a threat. It was always hard to tell with Lily. Gerald watched them. He watched them go directly to Chloe. Watched Maya put a hand on her knee and look up at her with the particular look she used when she wanted commentary on something, expectant, social, a baby who had learned that Chloe would always acknowledge what she was trying to say. Watched Lily offer the rabbit in Chloe's direction and then take it back immediately, which was not a genuine offer but a conversational one. They come to her, Gerald said, to no one in particular. Yes, Graham said. How long has she been in the home? Nearly 3 months. Gerald made a small sound. Not a judgment. An observation. The interview took 90 minutes. Graham was present for the formal portions. He answered questions with the precision of a man who is used to depositions and knows the exact weight of each word. He described the complaint as unexpected, the allegations as unrecognized in his own experience of Chloe's care, and the video as something he was still investigating. Gerald looked at him when he said this. Still investigating, he repeated. Yes. That suggests you haven't formed a conclusion. I don't form conclusions before the evidence is complete. Gerald wrote something in the folder. He wrote it with the particular deliberateness of someone who is noting not just what was said but how. After Gerald left, Graham stood in the doorway of the kitchen and watched Chloe give the girls their afternoon snack with the routine efficiency of a person whose life has not been disrupted by anything that happened that morning. She moved around the kitchen the way she always moved, with the calm purposefulness of someone who is doing exactly what she intended to be doing and has no performance of it to maintain. He wanted to say something. He did not know what. He went back to his study. The following morning, he found Chloe in the kitchen before 6. Earlier than usual. She was sitting at the table, not working, not preparing anything, just sitting with both hands around a mug, looking at the window. She heard him come in. She did not look at him immediately. "I know," she said. He stopped. "I know something changed," she said. "After Thursday. I know you received something, or found something, or were told something. I've felt it for a week." She looked at her mug. "I'm not going to pretend I don't notice, because I think you'd know I was pretending, and that would be worse." Graham sat down across from her. This was not what he had planned. There had been no plan, but there had been an instinct toward further distance, further observation, further careful gathering of information before any conversation was had. And now she had opened the door first and was sitting with both hands around a mug looking him in the eye, and he was across the table from her at 5:50 in the morning with no armor prepared. "There is a complaint," he said. "Filed with CPS. A video." He held her gaze. "And a record from Dayton." She went very still. Not the stillness of guilt, he had learned to read her stillness now, had months of it as context, and the still of guilt was a particular animal, a shutting down, withdrawal of light from behind the eyes. This stillness was different. This was the stillness of a woman who has been waiting for a specific thing to arrive and has just watched it walk through the door. "The Dayton case," she said. "A complaint naming you. A vulnerable adult. An incident in the night." She set down the mug. "It wasn't me," she said. "I wasn't there that night. But I let the record say I was." He waited. "There was a girl," she said. 17 years old. Constance's granddaughter. She had taken the shift for me so I could go to my mother's. She wanted to help, she wanted to be part of the care, and her mother had told her she couldn't because she was too young. So she was doing it in secret. Chloe's voice was level. She had told this story before, in her own mind, many times. When the neighbor called it in, Ray's name wasn't in the report because Constance hadn't told them Ray was there. It was my name, from the schedule. And Constance asked me, she looked me in the eye and asked me not to let it fall on the girl. A pause. So I let it fall on me. The kitchen was quiet. "You understand how this looks," Graham said. "I understand exactly how it looks. I understood how it would look 5 years ago when I made the choice." She met his eyes. "I also understood that Ray was 17 and had the rest of her life ahead of her, and that a formal finding of neglect attached to her name would follow her into every job application and every licensing process and every room where she tried to build something. And I was 22 and I already knew how to carry things quietly." Graham looked at his hands on the table. "The video," she said. He raised his eyes. "I know which moment they pulled it from," she said. "Maya had grabbed the edge of the stove when I turned my back. She had pulled herself up and put both hands on the burner cover, the way she tests everything when I'm not looking directly at her. I hadn't turned it on yet, but I didn't know that she hadn't already touched something hot. That's why my voice was raised. I was scared. And the crying was because I moved her too fast and she didn't understand why." She looked at him with an evenness that cost her something visible. "I would do it again. I would raise my voice again. A scared child is recoverable. A burned child is not." Graham's jaw was working. "Someone edited that clip," she said. "Cut it from a longer piece. I don't know how they got it. I don't know who. But I know that the stove is in the frame and the moment before, where you can see I was reacting to her reaching for it, is not." He was already moving in his mind before she finished, already running back through the access log, through the camera system, through the particular question that had begun as a small suspicion on Thursday morning and had been growing, without him naming it, all week. 2 days later, on a Friday evening, when the girls were asleep and the house was the particular quiet of a place at rest, Chloe came to him. She stood in the doorway of his study with her bag over one shoulder. "I'm giving you my notice," she said. He looked up from his desk. She was not crying. She was not angry. She was the version of herself that he had seen only once before, in the service room, the afternoon of the living room, when she had looked at the crumpled drawing in his hand and spoken with the particular precision of someone who has decided to say the hard thing clearly. "You didn't ask me for my explanation," she said. "You could have. I would have told you everything I told you this morning, on the first day. You chose to withdraw instead. To watch me from a distance while you decided." She swallowed once. "I understand why. I do. But I won't stay in a house where I have to prove I didn't break something I helped build." Graham stood up. "Chloe. The girls will be fine," she said. "They're different than they were. You're different than you were. Whatever happens next, you know how to be on the floor with them. That's not going anywhere." A small pause. "But I won't wait for a verdict on who I am in a house where I was the one who helped make it worth coming home to." She adjusted the bag on her shoulder. "I'll leave the schedule on the kitchen table. They like the fruit cut small, Maya especially. She's been testing the sippy cup with the blue lid more than the green one. It's newer and the grip is better." She paused. "Lily needs the rabbit at nap time or she'll be up by 3. She walked away down the hallway. The front door opened and closed. And from the baby monitor on Graham's desk, the soft, steady sound of 2 girls sleeping, the white noise machine on its low setting, the rhythm of a room at rest. In the morning, Lily looked at the door. Not once. Not in the active, searching way of that first afternoon, 11 months ago, after Graham had sent Chloe away the first time. This time it was quieter. Lily looked at the door the way children look at places where someone they loved used to stand. With the knowledge, already present in her body at 15 months old, that the door is where people go when they are gone. Maya did not look at the door. She sat on the kitchen floor and hummed to herself and then, without warning, let out a single high, clear sound, her sound for Chloe, the one she had been making for weeks, and then was quiet. Graham stood at the counter and held the edge of it with both hands and breathed through his nose until his chest stopped doing what it was doing. Then he went back to his desk. He was going to find out who had done this. If you're still with us, type, "I hear you, Chloe," in the comments. Let's see how many of you are truly paying attention. The question had been there since Thursday morning. Not announced. Not fully formed. A shape without a name, moving through the peripheral vision of a mind that was busy looking at other things. But it had been there since the moment Graham had picked up that envelope and wondered, without completing the thought, who had known to put it through that mail slot at exactly that time. He had 3 separate investigations running by the following Monday. Patricia's firm was tracing the anonymous legal complaint backward through its structural components, the specific language, the filing sequence, the law firm that had front-ended the delivery. The camera system technician, commissioned through a second security firm entirely, was auditing his home network for external access, any breach, any unauthorized point of entry into the footage stream. And Graham himself, alone at his desk with the files Patricia had assembled and the coffee he kept forgetting was there, was doing what he had always done best. He was reading between lines. The complaint was sophisticated in a specific way. Not lawyer sophisticated, any sufficiently motivated person could hire sufficient counsel. It was sophisticated in its understanding of the particular fears of Graham Whitmore. The allegation was not generic child endangerment. It was tailored. Emotional manipulation of children in her care. Making herself indispensable. Positioning herself to replace something irreplaceable. He had heard this language before. He had heard it in the living room, 11 months ago, from a woman in a crisp gray uniform with a silver tray and 11 years of trust accumulated quietly. A poor girl who's never had anything of her own, sometimes they take what isn't theirs. Not jewelry. Not money. Something worse. They take the children's hearts. He sat with this for a long time. Then he pulled the file he had prepared when he dismissed Mrs. Hargrove, the complete account he had given his attorneys, time-stamped, detailing the camera footage, the access logs, the pattern of false evaluations. He had kept it as a deterrent. He had told her, explicitly, that it existed and would be used if she interfered. She had nodded with the dignity of a woman accepting terms. He had believed her. He called the security technician first. The answer came back within the hour. A third-party monitoring application had been installed on his home network 3 months ago, not through a breach, but through a physical access point. A device on the network. Something that had been inside the house and connected to the Wi-Fi. 3 months ago. He thought about what had happened 3 months ago. Mrs. Hargrove had sent a gift. Elaborate, thoughtful. A high-quality Bluetooth speaker for the nursery, for the music Chloe played during floor time. He had thought it a gesture of, he wasn't sure what he'd thought. He had accepted it. He had given it to Chloe, who had thanked him and placed it in the nursery and used it every morning. He went to the nursery. The speaker was on the shelf above the changing table. He turned it over. It was not a monitoring device in itself, but it had been the vector, the technician explained when Graham called back, for a secondary application that had been quietly running on the network since the device connected. A passive collector. One that had been transmitting camera access to a remote viewer for nearly 3 months. Someone had been watching his house from the outside. Someone had seen the footage. Had selected 47 seconds of it. Had edited them. Had built a case. Patricia came back the same afternoon with the legal trail on the complaint. It had originated through a chain of intermediaries designed to be difficult to trace, but not impossible, not for a firm with the resources that Patricia's had. The chain led, at its origin point, to a property management company in New Jersey. The property management company shared a registered agent with a small consulting firm. The consulting firm's most recent listed client was a woman named Eleanor Hargrove, age 64, former household manager. Mrs. Hargrove. Graham set the report on his desk and sat back in his chair and looked at the ceiling. He had given her 3-month severance. He had given her a warning. He had built a deterrent file and told her it existed and made it as clear as he knew how to make it that her interference would be answered. She had smiled with dignity, taken the envelope, and walked out. And then she had gone home and gotten on a computer and started building again. Not impulsively. Not in the hot anger of someone who has been caught and is lashing out. Carefully. Patiently. Over 3 months, she had watched, planned, identified the date and record, located the 47 seconds, constructed the complaint, and delivered it at the most vulnerable possible moment, the morning of a week when Graham was already emotionally stretched, when the girls had had their 18-month developmental appointment the day before and the house was slightly off its rhythm. She had been monitoring him. She had known the rhythm of his house. She had used it. Graham thought about the 11 years. He thought about every conversation, every evaluation, every piece of information she had been trusted with about the people in this house. About the nannies she had driven away before Chloe. About how many small moments she had stood in doorways, watching, measuring, deciding what narrative to build from what she saw. About how much of his own story she had been quietly authoring without his knowledge. He thought about Mrs. Hargrove saying, in his study on the morning he dismissed her, "When Mrs. Whitmore was alive, I ran this house. I was indispensable." He thought about indispensability, about what it does to a person when the identity they have built around a role is threatened by someone who does the emotional heart of that role better than they ever did. He thought about how grief had been the wall around his own indispensability. The monument he had maintained because it made him necessary. Because no one else could be trusted to keep Diane's memory correctly. And he recognized something in Mrs. Hargrove that he had only just begun to recognize in himself. The need to be the only one. The fear, underneath all the management and the performance and the crisp gray uniforms, that if someone else could love these children well, if someone young and warm and laughing on the floor could make them flourish, then what had 11 years of careful, excellent, impeccable management actually meant. It was not loyalty to this family that had driven her. It was the terror of being replaceable. Graham picked up his phone. He did not call his attorneys first. He called Chloe. She picked up on the second ring. Not the third, not the careful stranger answering of the last time he had called her. The second. As if she had been expecting it. As if she had known, in the way she knew most things about the house, that this call was already on its way. "I know who filed the complaint," Graham said. A pause. "I know what the Dayton record actually is," he continued. "I know about Ray. I know about the stove and the edited clip. I have the complete access log showing how the footage was obtained and who obtained it." She said nothing. Mrs. Hargrove installed a monitoring device through the nursery speaker 3 months ago. She has been watching the house. She built the complaint from what she saw and what she found in your history, and she delivered it at a time calculated to do maximum damage to what she understood about my psychology. A longer silence. "She understood your psychology well," Chloe said. "Yes," Graham said. "She did. Because I handed it to her. Over 11 years, I handed it to her, and she filed it away, and she used it." He paused. "The same way I gave her my daughter's emotional well-being to evaluate, and she used that too." Outside, through the study window, the garden had gone gold with late afternoon light. Graham had left his coffee on the desk for the fourth time and it was cold again. He noticed this absently, the way you notice ordinary things in extraordinary moments. I was wrong not to come to you immediately, he said. I had 3 weeks of who you are to compare against 47 seconds. And I let the 47 seconds sit between us, growing, instead of asking you what they meant. That was not caution. That was the same thing I've always done, using distance as a substitute for the harder thing. Which harder thing? Trust. Actual trust. Not monitored trust. Not verified trust. He said the word as if he had needed to find it in a new part of himself. The kind that means you go to the person and ask them. Chloe was quiet. I would like you to come back, Graham said. And I want to be clear about what I am asking. I'm not asking you back to your position. I'm asking you back to the house. To the girls. To the kitchen in the morning. A pause. To whatever this actually is, which I have not been completely honest with myself about. She let that last sentence sit. What is it, she said. Completely honestly. I don't know the right word for it. I know that you came back the first time because the girls needed you, and I asked you back for their sake. I know that the second time, he stopped. Restarted. I am asking you back because when you left, and Maya made that sound for you in the kitchen and it went unanswered, something in this house went quiet in a way that was not peace. And I have been sitting with the difference between those two kinds of quiet for a week now. Another pause. You're not good at this, Chloe said. No. Saying the emotional thing directly. I am aware. You went around it 3 times. I'm going around it because I don't know what I'm allowed to say, he said. You work in my house. You are significantly younger than me. There are about 47 reasons to say nothing at all. And you're calling anyway. Yes. A sound came through the phone, something small, controlled, not quite a laugh but in the same family. I had conditions, she said. When I came back the first time. Yes. I'm going to have conditions this time, too. Tell me. She told him. They were not complicated. They were the conditions of a woman who has learned that her own well-being is not a negotiating position but a requirement. She wanted the formal employment documentation updated to reflect reality. She wanted a clear channel of communication with Graham directly. And she wanted, if another complaint or accusation or anonymous delivery came to the door, to be brought in on the conversation on the first day. Not after a week of cold distance. The first day, Graham confirmed. Yes. Those conditions are reasonable. I know they are, she said. That's why they're my conditions. He almost smiled. Where are you, he said. I'm finishing a shift at a daycare near Delwood. They needed a short-term fill-in. I'll come to you. You don't have to. I'll come to you, he said. I'm bringing the girls. He collected Lily and Maya with the efficiency of a man who had been on the floor with them long enough to know how to move quickly without creating chaos, Maya into the carrier, Lily into the stroller with her rabbit and a philosophical approach to the situation, Graham in his jacket with the sleeves not quite right because he had been dressing quickly and had not bothered with the mirror. He drove. He parked outside the daycare at the end of Chloe's shift and stood on the sidewalk in the late afternoon and watched her come through the door. She saw him. She saw the girls. And Maya, from the carrier against his chest, in her wide-legged committed way of making herself known, reached out her arms. Not hesitation. Not confusion. Not the uncertain reaching of a child who is not sure whether this is someone safe. Recognition. The complete, full-body recognition of a baby who has found, at distance, the person she knows. Graham watched this happen. He watched Chloe's face in the moment she registered it, the way it moved from careful to open without any of the intermediate steps, the way a door swings on a well-oiled hinge. She came down the steps and crossed the sidewalk and took Maya from the carrier and held her, and Lily reached up from the stroller and made her sound, the not-quite song, the possible threat, and Chloe reached down and touched her cheek. Hi, Chloe said to the girls. And then she looked at Graham. Hi, she said. Hi, he said. And Lily, in the stroller, with her rabbit, said something emphatic and irrelevant and both of them looked at her and then back at each other, and neither of them laughed, exactly, but the sound that happened between them was in the same neighborhood as laughter. That evening, Graham told Chloe everything. The full account, Mrs. Hargrove's name, the speaker, the monitoring application, the chain of intermediaries, the date and record she had weaponized against its actual meaning. He laid it out with the completeness of a man who has decided that the only way to build something that lasts is to stop withholding the materials. Chloe listened without interruption. "What are you going to do?" she asked when he was done. "Patricia has the full file," he said. "The monitoring device is a criminal matter if we pursue it. There will be a civil component to the employment retaliation angle." He paused. "I intend to pursue it. Not for satisfaction. Because the previous 4 nannies deserve to know what happened to them, and because there are accountability structures that exist specifically so that what she did cannot be done quietly and without consequence." "The 4 nannies," Chloe said. "I reached out to them in the last week. 3 agreed to speak with Patricia." He looked at the table. 2 of them were glad someone had asked. 1 of them had left the field entirely. She's working in a different industry now because she was told, multiple times in the years after, that her references were complicated. The kitchen was quiet. 11 years, Chloe said. She built 11 years of trust and used it to take things apart. Yes. Because she was afraid of being replaceable. Yes. He paused. I understand that fear. I have not been without it myself. Chloe looked at him. I know, she said. Not unkindly. In the way she said most things, plainly, with the intention of being understood. There is a second kind of trust. The first kind is the one we talk about, the kind that begins in hope, in good faith, in the decision to believe that a person is who they appear to be. That trust is brave. It is necessary. Without it, we cannot let anyone into our houses or our lives or the rooms where our most tender things are kept. But the first kind of trust can be broken. And after it is broken, after it has been built into something real and then interrogated, doubted, used as evidence against itself, after you have stood in a kitchen and watched someone you trusted fold themselves into their coat and walk out a door you weren't brave enough to close behind them, there is a second kind. The second kind is not hope. It is a choice. It is looking at the full record, not 47 seconds of it, the full record, and deciding that what you have seen over months and the weight of a child's recognition in your chest outweigh the doubt that was placed there by someone with a reason to place it. It is knowing that trust was weaponized against you and choosing it anyway, with both eyes open, not because you are naive but because you have decided that the alternative, a life organized around the possibility of betrayal, is smaller than you are. Graham Whitmore made that choice on a sidewalk in front of a daycare at the end of a shift. And Chloe Marsh, who had made her version of it 5 years earlier in a hospital room in Dayton when she looked at a 17-year-old and said, silently, I will carry this for you, came down the steps and met him there. The house became something new after that. Not a monument. Not a museum. Not a management operation with 16 pages of rules and oiled locks and surveillance feeds reviewed at midnight. A home. The ordinary, irreplaceable kind, made not from perfection but from the accumulation of daily decisions to show up, on the floor, in the mess, in the moments that no camera can capture and no document can describe and no formal complaint can reach. Maya walked through it with her wide-legged intensity, testing everything, growing daily into a person with opinions and preferences and a sound for everyone she loved. Lily carried her rabbit and made her ambiguous sounds and occasionally threw food and had strong feelings about the color of her cup. Graham was on the floor. Chloe was there. And the house, which had been, for a time, a very beautiful, very careful, very lonely place, made a sound it had not made in a long time. It sounded like home. Here is what I want to ask you, before you go. Think about the last time someone planted a doubt in your mind about a person you trusted. Think about what they gave you, the 47 seconds, the selective detail, the anonymous delivery, the thing designed to look like evidence but was really just fear in a different costume. Think about what you did with it. Did you go to that person on the first day? Or did you withdraw, just a little, just for a while, and let the doubt sit at the table and become comfortable? There is no judgment in that question. Withdrawal is human. It is the oldest protective instinct there is. But there is a cost to it, and the cost is paid by the person who feels the change in you before you have said a word, the person who reads the weather of a room and knows something is wrong and has to decide whether to wait for you to ask or to speak first. Chloe Marsh spoke first. In a kitchen at 5:50 in the morning, with both hands around a mug and no armor prepared, she said, I know something changed. She gave him the open door. She made the trust possible before he earned it. That is not naivety. That is the kind of courage that doesn't make the news. The quiet, daily kind. The kind that does not wear yellow rubber gloves for performance but because the job requires it. The kind that doesn't stay because the salary is enough but because she said she doesn't leave. There are Chloe Marshes in your life. Some of them you have already found. Some of them are still coming, in worn sneakers, with laminated photographs in their bags and sun patches on their aprons and the particular willingness to get on the floor that tells you everything you need to know about a person. Don't let someone else's fear of being replaceable take them from you. And if you withdrew when you should have asked, if someone in your life is currently sitting across the table from a version of you that has gone quiet and careful and distant and doesn't fully understand why, it is not too late to say, I received something. I was afraid. Tell me the truth. That is the whole work. That is all of it. The first time you trust someone, it is hope. The second time, after the doubt, after the silence, after the 47 seconds and the withdrawal and the morning you stood at the kitchen counter and held the edge of it until your chest settled, after all of that, when you choose it again with your eyes open and your history visible and your daughter's recognition in your arms. That is not hope anymore. That is love. The earned kind. The only kind that stays. If this story found you somewhere you needed to be found, share it. Not for the numbers. For the person in your life who has been waiting for you to ask. Subscribe. Because what is coming is worth waiting for.